Hello! Today we're going to be talking about Vim. Now in almost everything that I've made so far, Vim, or Neovim, but it's practically the same, has featured in a very prominent spot, because it's featured as my text editor or code editor of choice. It also just so happens to be my diff tool and also a tool for viewing internet sites when I don't want to have loads of JavaScript or CSS in the way. But I thought that I'd talk a little bit about some of the design ideals and some of the ideas, because I'm quite proud of my vimrc that went into creating the vimrc, because I think that I've put quite a bit of work into getting it to work the way that it does. So I think I might as well share some of my wisdom with people who want to build things similar. So Vim, I think, just even out of the box, Neovim or Vim is just a fantastic piece of software. I think the visual editing style is much more intuitive and it works much better than most other styles of editing. Particularly, it removes the requirement for you to have a mouse and makes it so that moving around doesn't require you to use unintuitive arrow keys, although you can use arrow keys if you really want. It also comes with a great set of tools known as text objects, which allow you to perform transformations on text, which are just absolutely marvelous. I think it's a marvelous piece of design, and I think that Neovim and its improvements over the original Vim makes it a much more minimal piece of software. You know, I'm not kind of one of the people who obsesses over everything being minimal. I mean, I use like a Chromium-based browser. If I was obsessed with minimalism, I'd use something like, I don't know what it's called, Cute Browser or like Lynx or whatever it's called. But no, I'm perfectly happy to go with the mainstream on that one. And as well, I'm perfectly happy to extend Vim and keep in a lot of the Vim features that people call bloat sometimes. Because I think that if you actually need something for you to get your job done and get what you like to do in your spare time done quicker, then I think it's perfectly well justified having that in a piece of software. I'm not going to slow down my entire PC so I can run like 4 language servers just so I can brag on Reddit about following the Unix philosophy or whatever. But with all of that out of the way, I want to talk about some of the design points that come into my Vim configuration, and the first one is that I want it to start up fast. And for a demonstration as to why, I want to show a typical editing session with me editing a program Podbit, which is my podcast client, which is already running, but you know, which is showing stuff. So I've loaded up a not related podcast in here, but it effectively reads the standard Newsboat queue file and then downloads media files and then shows their metadata and allows you to queue them up and play them using some idling MPV instances in the background. It's quite minimal, I think, because I only want it to just sit here and just receive audio files to play, but it makes full leverage of multi-threading, so it's running Go. But let's say for 1 second, now hang on a minute, I want to try, and let's get rid of this because that was from a previous example. Say that I want to make it so that before this actually starts up, we want to try and get the user to confirm that they're actually here. Well, what I could do is, and you can see already that I'm navigating around the file using the curly braces, which go you forwards and backwards 1 block, that is, until a line which is either entirely white space or empty. And I'm going to have a look. Where is the place that we might want to do this? Well, first of all, we want to check whether we're running, so I think we're happy to keep it like that. But we need to do this before we actually do this benchmark here, or do we? Because we want to be able to save our data here. So what we could do is we could add a channel as the reload loop here. So I could declare a channel up here. But in order to do that, we need to go into the data, I need to go into data.go, and can you see we're already opening multiple terminal windows, and we're already opening multiple instances of Neovim, and all of them are opening fast. So now suddenly what happens if I've done all my editing here, I've done like, I don't know, format.print, are you here, something like that, then what happens if that's introduced a regression with our UI startup system? So we open UI.go, start it up, have a look through, see the issues in our render loop, let's fix it here, fix issue here, I don't know, maybe put to do or something right here. And so already I've opened 3 terminal windows, 3 Neovim instances. Because I have key bindings in the terminal to open in the same window, you get an IDE-like experience, but with all the benefits of multiple terminal windows, such as the fact that I can do anything I want in the shell. I can get stuff like LF support, have a look around my file system, basically use this like some kind of fully featured IDE. Who needs VS Code when you just have multiple terminal windows is what I'd like to know. I'm sorry, that's just my my view on the matter. I don't know whether this is cumbersome for some people. It probably is. I think it's safe to say that this is probably cumbersome for some people, but I was willing to go and make it so that this is configured so that it starts up fast and works well, because it's often worth it to trade runtime performance for startup, which is my philosophy on the subject. And that's precisely why I've chosen to switch between mainline Gruffbox and actually this Gruffbox 8. Gruffbox 8 is an optimized and re-implemented version of Gruffbox with slightly improved colors, in my opinion, as well as in the opinion of the guy who wrote it. And also it adds to startup performance very greatly. So I like the color scheme, and it adds to startup performance. What isn't there to like? Also, another one here is Lightline, because Airline comes with a bunch of bundled integrations, and although they are very cool, and I did use them for a very long time, especially on my laptop with a mechanical hard drive, it was actually adding to Neovim startup quite a lot, because for some reason Linux wasn't detecting it could cache the Neovim startup files, so it was being reread every single time, and so it was adding to quite a bit of startup. And really, if you do a Neovim profile on its startup files, it will constantly tell you that the theme and the tray, like the status line it's called, are always the things that add to your startup. So I think this is worth swapping out for some more optimized versions, especially given the fact as well that this actually, I'm pretty sure it actually allows you to do more configuration than the main line anyway, which in my opinion is pretty good. And so it just says here, I use many nvim instances at once, and the tiling WM is designed for this purpose. I don't have any need, for instance, if we have like, I don't know, Vim, there's this thing you can do like v-split and like tab new and like have multiple different tabs and stuff like that, and then I can go like, and I don't know why it didn't detect bash rc, but you can go through the files, never mind. You can split it inside of Vim. I don't need this when I have a tiling window manager. You can already open lots and lots of instances of Neovim and have them all here. I can run git status here, you can look at everything at once, and it's all divided correctly between the on-screen space, and it's fantastic. So you get an IDE without the fluff. You get to do things the Vim way, not the Eclipse or the Emacs way. Because in my opinion, the Eclipse way is basically I expect the software to do everything for me, and I think that that's kind of stupid. When I talk about the IDE without the fluff, and I talk about the contrast between the Vim way and the Emacs or Eclipse way, what I'm essentially talking about is the difference between the attitude of your text editor being one tool in many, and the attitude of your text editor having to be the toolkit that contains many tools. For me, I would much rather go into a project directory. I would much rather vim main.go, like make changes, I don't know, format.errorf, whatever, and then, I don't know, make sure it actually works, and then run a git diff rather than have my diff tool constantly in my IDE. And to be clear, I actually do use nvim as a diff tool, but all this is doing is reading a regular diff and showing it in context. It's not actually doing any kind of git parsing. It's not parsing your repository or anything like that. All it's doing is it's showing the information Git has presented to it. So rather than attempting to integrate everything with Vim, I'd much rather just close Vim and do something else, or even alternately just use a convenient keybind to show my git status while I'm working. There's nothing stopping me from working on main.go and then going over here and running a git diff or a git status or git parse rev if you I don't know what it is. Anyway, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, and this is the beauty of the integration with a tiled window manager, because you can just have multiple instances open. So, this is also building into, it's often good to intentionally exclude features, which is basically what I was talking about when I talked about IDE without the fluff, because I am perfectly fine when building or running a program, rather than in Eclipse having some massive component of the software load up and do that all for you. Instead, I would much rather just go to another terminal and just run make, like this, rather than have something in here where I go like build or something. I think you can actually in Vim. I'd prefer it if they got rid of that, honestly. That would be something that I would consider bloat, which, you know, would just be another good argument for software that's minimal enough for you to edit it and compile from source. But unfortunately Vim isn't at that point. But you know, that's something that I would choose to go without. Another thing is splitting and tabs, which I mentioned a minute ago. Git management I mentioned a minute ago. I'd actually append here integrated, because I think that programs that have an integrated terminal just don't make any sense at all when you're in a tiling window manager like this. Maybe if you're in a floating window manager like this, and you know you have one window and you have to you know, work with this one window, and like the only thing that you can really see on screen realistically is this one window, and because you're like a Windows user and this is what your computer looks like most of the time, then I can see the argument. What I can't see the argument for is running a tiling window manager and then using VS Code, for instance. Like, VS Code is a very Windows-centric program in its design, because it attempts to create, effectively, a tiling window manager inside of a stacking window manager through creating, like, split tabs and stuff inside of your editor window. And I think that's just another good argument for tiling WMs over other stuff. So, for me, integrated terminals, Git management, all this stuff, it's just not something that I'm going to go with, because I don't find it particularly useful. Something else that I think is very centric to this configuration, and this will probably be useful if we go down at this point, is that visuals are absolutely key. I'm happy to give up some performance to get visual indication of what I'm doing on screen. So, as you can see, when I start up Vim, there's an instant, a brief instant, when everything is highlighted pretty poorly. It's the default syntax highlighting, before it passes stuff from the LSP and it shows it on the screen in the form of highlight groups. So what it's doing is it's highlighting variables blue and like packages green, and the declarations are lighter green, references to variables are slightly lighter blue, everything else remains the same. This, for me, is fantastic, because I know that colours is a package just at a glance. I can see where it's declared. It highlights it even in the import statement. You know, I can see that Chan is the type, and then, you know, the type here is from the UI package, which is imported here. I can instantly see and visually parse the difference between the Chan here and the value that will be sent over the channel. And I think that that's fantastic. I think that's a fantastic feature for me to have. And so I am actually willing to give up performance to have my code look like this, rather than what you saw a second ago. Because, you know, this to me is so much clearer than anything else that's just kind of black and red or white and red. And the syntax highlighting for Vim script is really, really good, because it's designed to not have to use an LSP. It's designed to be regex parsable. So the syntax highlighting is very, very good. Unfortunately, the only other languages really that Vim provides having things like this in them is JavaScript, where I think it's regex parsable, and things like C++, where it's blatantly obvious that if something comes before 2 colons, it's going to be a namespace or a class name, so you can highlight it a special color. So I'm willing to sacrifice some performance for semantic highlights. And in addition, I know I said that Git integration isn't vital for me, but I think as well that Git gutter is actually something that I'm willing to have. As well, in the gutter, when it detects a syntax error, which is something that I could get from the terminal, but which I think in this case, again, the visuals are worth the added features. So generally speaking, I will I'm very willing to sacrifice a certain amount of minimality and a certain amount of performance for visual indications as I'm working, because when you're, believe it or not, when you're typing and when you're working, you're having to think about stuff, you're having to visually read what you're seeing, you're having to type down new things, you're having to solve problems in your head, and if you can remove any of those problems in your head and make it instantly visible, I think that's a very big win, honestly. And finally, I have the philosophy that fewer keybinds are good, but not to the point where you're literally turning yourself into some, like, ultra-precise machine. No, in order to get from line 129 to line 125, I'm not going to press 5k. I'm just not. Or 4k. See, I can't even do subtraction in my head under pressure. Like, the people who tell you to do that are the kind of people who think that if you, for instance, use head instead of said 11q, you're some kind of Unix-hating monster, right? If you take Vim to its logical conclusion, yes, you are going to want to eliminate as many keybinds as possible, but not to the point where you might as well write a meta-programming language to edit text for you. Like, that's another kind of Emacs thing. In order to get your text editor working, you have to use some, like, ESO-lang, esoteric programming language that's basically designed out of, I can't remember what it's called, red and black trees, or some binary tree thing, that, like, a programming language designed around a data structure. It's weird, but you shouldn't have to learn that to get your text editing done. I think that it's very good to be able to just do it straightforward Vim way. But I'm perfectly happy to hold down K. I'm not going to tell you that you should always be pressing like 10k or whatever. What I do think, however, is you can go in bigger blocks, then do. You know, jump over blocks that you don't like. Don't bother using folds. They're generally quite quite a nuisance to fold and unfold. Just skip over code. Often it's very useful as well to see code in context. I think code folding is a very harmful feature, if anything. So it says here, no, I'm not going to enable relative numbers, so I can press 22J. Relative numbers decrease performance, cause all sorts of issues. They like conflict with my theme's gutter colors for some reason, make all of the diagnostic colors the same thing. No, I don't memorize every single text object. I don't know what was it, visual around block or something, VAB? No. See, I don't memorize things that I don't think I'm going to need. I know visual around word because I think it's useful. Visual inside word, that's useful. I know visual forward to equals. I know, for instance, visual $sign. All of these things are quite useful, and many text objects are useful. Like, for instance, you know, if we go forward to the quote, change inside quotes, if we assume that there's something here already. Change inside quotes or change around quotes, very useful. I think that that's something that's very useful to learn because it automates something very important. But when it's a text object that all it's doing is moving my cursor 4 characters back, pressing VE, no, I'm not going to learn that for the sake of it. V inside Word is no more efficient if you think about it than pressing back VE. VIW, 3 keybinds, back VE, 3 keybinds. It's the same exact thing. It does the same thing. And so yes, use around word quote, or that shouldn't be around word. It should be just around quote. No, it should be around word. You know, use around, which is new surround, then around word quote. I think that is perfectly fine. It's much better than recording a macro that goes back, inserts a quote, goes to the end, and then like does this how many times. Yes, I think text objects are marvelous design. They allow you to automate all kinds of things. Macros are very good. Learning millions and millions of keybinds is just not the way to go. You know, there are a certain amount for things that you do on a daily basis or on a minutely basis, even on a other line-based basis, that are perfectly well and good worth learning. For instance, like the curly braces, I use this all the time. And if I want to jump over a big section of text, I'm perfectly happy to estimate just in my head and go, okay, looks like there's about 4 blocks here, I want to go a bit further than that, so I'm going to go 5B. You know, if I'd accidentally typed a bunch of underscores over here, I might go, okay, you know, I don't need them, type 3x. You know, that's the kind of repeat automation that I think is very useful and something that you should use. But fewer keybinds shouldn't put you on the autism spectrum, okay? It's a text editor. It's not like some life philosophy. You know, there's being efficient, and then there's attempting to turn yourself into a literal machine, and those two things are not the same. So, just summarizing slightly, I think that Neovim is a fantastic piece of software, and so is the original Vim, and in fact VI as well, the program, I don't know if I have it installed, but the program that all of this is based on, a fantastic piece of software, fantastically well designed piece of software, and in fact I think that the modal editing style, along with like text transformation, kind of sed regex style text transformation, being able to search for a pattern, you know, what it could do, or you have to, you know, search for patterns like that and then go to next, change. You know, that's that for me is a fantastic way to do things as well. Regular expressions are extremely powerful and extremely useful. If you think there's a problem that regular expressions can't be applied to, chances are you probably don't know regular expressions well enough yet. But I just thought that I'd do a little bit of a talk about how that I have organized my Vim configuration and give a little bit of wisdom on how I think Vim should be used.